Welcome back to the Talk of the Town podcast. I'm your host, Andy Burrows, here on a fine first day of spring, fine day here at Creasy Park with Dunstable Town manager Steve O'Reilly. Steve-O, morning, mate. 2 months left of the season. Steve-O, great win on Tuesday night over high-flying London Lions. First time I've seen Dunstable Town beat them, actually. What's your thoughts as we sit here on a Saturday morning? Really good performance on Tuesday night, mate. Considering the first half and the turnaround we had, must be really pleased.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, we spoke a bit briefly after in terms of it, and look, we were quite honest in terms of our reflection on the first 45, and probably the feelings haven't changed too much really since that. Obviously, in the days after. But look, I mentioned at the time, I think I take a lot of responsibility really for kind of the issues we had in the first 45, particularly around just the approach to the game. I think that. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. I maybe focused a little bit too much in terms of what London Lions potentially could have brought to the game, and maybe kind of based what we thought was going to happen on when we played them previously. And it was a different game, and the game's unique, and each game's different, and also we're different than the times we played them previously. So, I think that we gave them a little bit too much respect at times. I think in the second half we were much better, and we were on the front foot, and as we tried to be, in all the games really. So so the responsibility really kind of fell on me. But the players also recognise their part in it as well. And, sometimes you feel like when you go in as a manager, you've got to kind of be, really direct with them, and kind of sometimes almost try and get a bit of energy into them and make them realise kind of where they haven't quite been at the level. But I didn't really need to on Tuesday night. I walked in the dressing room, and, some of the senior players were mentioning it. Actually, not even just some of the senior players, the leaders in the group, and some of them are actually some of our youngest players actually at times. But they were reflecting on it and mentioning the areas we had to improve. So really it's about me just kind of clarifying some of the messages, tweaking our tactical approach a little bit. And look, we had to make a couple of changes as well to try and impact the game. The second half was, chalk and cheese, right? And it was, it wasn't our best football, I don't think, of the season in terms of some of the quality and the passing maybe, but I thought in terms of intensity and energy and kind of that drive to go and win a game, I think it was right up there for us. And look, we've needed to try and keep this home run going. It's been positive really since September in the league. That's important for us as well. I really want us to establish this place as a tough place for teams to come. So Tuesday night kind of kept that going for us, and it sets us up well for the last quarter of the season really.
As a manager, Steve, how much do you have to find that balance of, like you just said there, you might have focused too much on London Lions. How much do you have to find a balance of, you want to focus on the opposition, but then also know what our strengths are? Is that a fine balance? Does that vary from different opponents?
It does. I think that, you kind of look at, you try to look at, the opposition in terms of can you nullify their threats? And I think that that's important. But I think, where sometimes I've got it wrong maybe at times. And, again, I'll point to Tuesday night as an example of that. If you kind of overcompensate and try and take too much away from your own game to try and stop an opposition, well, you're only limiting yourself in that moment. So it is a fine balance, because you do want to be able to give the lads the right information that's going to help them go and win the game. And, as much as I'm saying I reflected on that and it didn't really work in that game, we've had other games where, there's been really important bits of information that we've been able to get there. I think probably just on reflection on terms of Tuesday and kind of mindful about how I move forward is, some of that doesn't necessarily need to be the whole group, and it shouldn't try and change the tone of what you're trying to do for the whole group. There might be some individual things that you're trying to get to individual players that they should be aware of when they're out on the pitch and against a certain opposition, a certain player. So you do want to strike the right balance, but, you're right. I think that really, as much focus as possible should be on what we need to do, and us performing at our best level. And if we can do that, I think as we've shown now really for the last 4 or 5 months, if we can perform at a high level, we'll put ourselves in really good chances to win games.
With 2 months left of the season now, Steve, obviously me and you chat all the time on air, off air, I read your programme notes. Does your reflections change now as the season goes on, from obviously where we were, to me and you mentioned it all the time, to where we are now, to where the squad is, to where we all are as a coaching team? With 2 months left now, what are you most focused on? Is it the old cliche of game by game, or are you just, like you say, week on week, are we seeing more and more improvement? Because a lot of people are commenting to me now the vast improvements that we're making. We mention all the time, we notice it 'cause we're at training, we notice we're improving here the little bits. But when you hear the fans come back and say to you, wow, we're a completely different team. Even London Lions got chatting to one of their guys at half time. He said, wow, you're not a Dunstable team that we played 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago. So what's the focus on for you now as we head into the last 2 months of the season?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you do look, you do look towards the end of the season and kind of set some ideas about where you want to be. And I think that you know what we've got internally in terms of some of our targets, and the players are well aware of what we want to achieve between now and the end of the season. So that is there. But, when we do talk about it a lot, because it is the truth, we're a very young group, and, we kind of look at the different challenges that we get along the way. And, we spoke actually before that we had a similar kind of conversation for the Cockfosters game and about what sort of challenge that would be. It was a challenge on the day that we didn't rise to. We didn't do what we needed to do on that day. But where the progress has been seen is actually what our response has been after that. So, I think that early in the season, when we were losing games, we would lose, obviously the start of the season, we lost all those games at the start consecutively, and then we improved, and then we lost a couple of games back to back. Whereas now, when we played MK Irish, we went on a decent run after that, quite a lot of draws, but we went unbeaten for a little while. And then since the Cockfosters game, we've won games back to back. So yeah, you're looking at kind of, okay, where are we going to end up? You're looking at the individual games in ahead, so we don't get too far away. But really, I'm still looking for those individual challenges, or those challenges that come up during the season, how the group responds to them. And look, so far they're making progress in it. We've still got many, many areas that I'd like us to do better. And again, we spoke about that a little bit on Tuesday night. I think that the potential of this group is not yet realised. It's not even close to being realised. And so if we get too far ahead of ourselves, and actually, as opposed to doing the work that we've got to do session by session, week on week, we're not going to make the progress that we need to. So it's always a bit of a balance. It's human nature a little bit towards this stage of the season to start looking, okay, well, where might we end up? What does the plan look like into next season? I've got time to be able to go and do that. I can go and focus on that. With the coaching staff, we were already starting to plan for that. And we do that really all the way through the season. For the players, I want them to focus on making sure that they're working as hard as they can, training at the level they need to in order to be in the team for the next game.
Steve, just finishing up, obviously, the league restructuring they're talking about now. Obviously, we haven't got a game next Saturday. There's talk of now trying to get 20 teams into our league. How important is it now that the league do get the balance of that right? Because like you say, we're coming into spring now, but again, next Saturday we find ourselves without a game. I know some things have been put out on social media this week about trying to get 20 teams into our league next season. For you as a manager, how important is it that structure gets set for next season?
It is. I mean, I don't think it probably changes too much in terms of kind of how we'll plan and, what we'll want to do in terms of player recruitment and things like that. But, basic things like understanding what impact that's going to have in terms of start dates, for example, is important for us. I'd really welcome going back to 20 teams. I know some people like it a bit shorter, but and fewer teams. But if we had 20 teams in the league this season, that first 6 game run, we'd still have a bit more time to make up for it. But yeah, look, I think, we want to have 20 teams, we want to play as many games as football. We've got a really strong squad, so, you can utilise the squad with that. It does bring its own challenges in terms of, congestion of fixtures and, when games get called off in winter and then you've got those schedules at the end. But we want to play football. That's why we're all here. And, supporters want to come and watch games and we want to play games. And that's the reward for all the work that we put in. So I think it is. And look, I'd be surprised if it doesn't kind of get back up to 20, depending on which teams obviously get promoted and stuff. But, when there's other Step 5 leagues, not in and around us that have a full complement of teams, I'd expect us to go back up to that. I played in this league, I think, when there was 22 teams. So, you're playing 42 games in a season.
Like the reserve chat, a lot of chat last week of teams having reserve teams again. I saw that online. Was it last week or the week before? And me and you haven't really spoke about this. Scotty, I think, put something in the Dunstable WhatsApp group. There's talk of teams having reserve sides again. Is that something you'd like to see come back into the game?
Well, I know that the Spartan League are pushing to have a reserve league back again next season. So, I think that's something that you're looking at. I think that it is a challenge for clubs like ours to.
Could we do it, you think?
I mean, it's
do it. Look,
I mean, look, I think in terms of getting people attracted to come and play for Dunstable Town, I think that's not a problem for us. I think that you've got to look at how you're stretching your resources and kind of where resources have the most value. We've utilised this season quite well, teams in maybe different steps in different league structures to try and go and get players games and stuff. So there are definite benefits to it. But I think that it can easily be it can easily be a burden on a club unless it's done really well. So, I think that certainly from my perspective anyway, if the club had an ambition to do it, whether it's, would it be next season or in a future season, it's not even really something that we've discussed at this moment of time. Because as you say, it's very fresh news.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
But look, I think that you want to have a real clear approach about what you want to achieve from it, because otherwise, we know this, right? Clubs aren't endless sources of money, and that it is a lot to fund a reserve team, and so you really want to make sure that you're getting good value from it. But as I said, there's no shortage of interest of people wanting to play for Dunstable Town, which is a great position to be in. As a manager, it does give you certain opportunities in terms of players' minutes and developing young players. But yeah, it's not straightforward, and I think the only caution I'd have is it was done in the past and then it was taken away for a reason.
Yeah.
Some of that might not have been worked out as people expected. Some of it might have been for good reason. Bringing it back, I understand, but it does bring its challenges.
Good for players, would you say? Like, if you wanted to say, we've had Frankie Bochum at the start when he was with us coming back from injury, would you have benefited from him having reserve games at Dunstable rather than him just training? For instance,
yeah, I mean, look, we've got players like Malik and Kyle now who are kind of coming back into it as well, who haven't played competitive football. Kyle obviously more than a season, and you look at Malik hasn't played in almost 3 seasons really. So actually having an environment for them to be able to play in, and under the same badge, and so you've got some control and stuff. Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, it's got to be a wider benefit to the group as well. Also, there's again, I think there's sometimes a psychological thing for players to understand. Okay, well, do they want to come and play for a reserve team?
Yeah.
It's a good thing for as you say, first team players to go and get minutes. Players don't want to play in reserve teams. They want to be in first teams, and so. Those are the challenges you had. And look, I've had kind of some experience of it, at Harpenden over the last few seasons, kind of run a development team.
Is that good for the development players? Would that be an introduction into adult football, would you say? So look, say for argument's sake at Dunstable Town, look, you've come up from the under-18s, have a few games in the reserves, you'll come down and look at them. I think they might be ready for the first team. Is that beneficial?
I think it is, and I think that done in the right way and with the right coaching environment, I think that is something that can be beneficial. You have to make sure there's a pathway, there is a genuine pathway into the first team. I think the other challenge, maybe a little bit, and we probably be a good example of it now, which is we talk about young players. Generally speaking, if the young player is good enough to be playing in the first team environment, that's kind of what I want. And we've shown this season that we'll give them that opportunity as well. So. Look, you're right. It is certainly an opportunity, and that's why I think the idea of reserves kind of got dropped a little bit, and it was changed into development teams really, and it was focused on those young lads under 18s, trying to get their first step into senior football, and I think that is really beneficial. You just have to make sure that those players are then have an environment that they can then make the next step. There's other challenges to it. You've kind of have to really analyse what the difference is in terms of the standard between that level of football and the first team. So again, if we had a team now playing, in step 7 or step 8 as a development sort of side, that is a bigger jump than sometimes people recognise, up to, being a competitive step 5 team. So there are loads of pros to it. There are challenges that come alongside it. I think it's always something that clubs like us should be mindful of in terms of how are we creating a structure that allows young players to develop and progress and to get to the level that we want them to be able to get to. Sometimes that's internally within the club. Sometimes that's having arrangements and partnerships with clubs in other areas. But it's interesting. Look, I think it's always worth a discussion, and it's something that we're always mindful of.
Steve, as always, mate, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good luck today.
Cheers.